1941. After 3 weeks in Berlin, he met with Hitler. Think about it. November 1941 is when the German army started to lose its way in Russia. The Germans had been sure that Russia would fall within a few weeks. But by November, they had started to realize that it wasn't going to happen. In which case, they needed to prepare for the extremely cold Russian winter, which struck the fear of God into all Europeans, including Hitler, as it was what broke Napoleon. So you have the German offensive in Russia, which is the biggest offensive in the history of military warfare, and the Germans are going into the Russian winter, and yet still Hitler finds the time to meet with the leader of the Arabs in Palestine. This shows how highly Hitler rated his meeting with the Mufti. If you see yourself as someone who knows a lot about the history of the Israeli-Arab conflict, but you didn't know that the Mufti was in Nazi Germany during most of the war, don't feel bad about it. Although it is not in dispute, somehow it doesn't come up too often. Maybe because this part of history doesn't fit the narrative that the Palestinians want to put across. So the Mufti lived out the warriors in Berlin, but that is not actually when the connection started. Let's dig a bit deeper into that now. The Mufti was responsible for the deadly riots against Jews during the British Mandate on Palestine in 1920, 1921, and 1929. In 1933, just 2 months after Hitler was elected, the Mufti met with the German consul in Jerusalem, and the report back to Berlin said, "The Mufti explained to me today at length that Muslims, both within Palestine and without, welcome the new regime in Germany and hope for the spread of fascist, anti-democratic forms of government to other countries. Current Jewish economics and political influence is harmful everywhere and has to be combated." I think that this quote speaks for itself. Add to this that in 1936, the Mufti was responsible for the Arab revolt against the Jews and the British. To finance the revolt, the Mufti and his Arab gang stole, extorted, kidnapped, and killed other Arabs. But some of the money came from Italy and Germany. The Mufti also contacted the Italians to have them help him poison the water of Tel Aviv. From Palestine, the Mufti ran away to Iraq. Iraq was locked in a power struggle between the supporters of the British and the supporters of the Nazis. The Nazi diplomat Fritz Groba, remember this name, funded and supported Rashid al-Kailani, who for a short period of time was the Prime Minister of Iraq. The Mufti joined them, and during this battle in Iraq between the pro-British and the pro-Nazis, the pro-Nazis initiated the Farhud pogrom against the Jews of Baghdad. The Farhud pogrom is the first time that we see the effect of anti-Jewish Arab and Nazi cooperation. The Nazis provided the propaganda and the money, the Arabs the knives and the axes. Hundreds of Iraqis stormed the streets and murdered at least 180 Jews. Women were raped and Jewish property stolen. There is a well-known photo of this Nazi-Arab pogrom, and you see the streets full of Arabs with knives and swords. And by the way, while we are at it, have you ever seen hundreds of Jews, men and women, storming the streets looking to kill Arabs? Never, ever. After the British took over, both the Mufti and al-Kailani went to Germany. In Berlin, the Mufti got a monthly salary and an office called Das Arabische Büro des Großmufti, from which he broadcast Nazi propaganda in Arabic to the countries in the Middle East and North Africa. In the summer of 1942, as the German army advanced through North Africa, the SS established a unit called Einsatzkommando Ägypten, Egypt, and its goal was to eliminate the Jews in Palestine with the help of local Arabs. After the British victory in El Alamein, the threat of annihilation of the Jews in the Middle East was removed, but the Mufti kept helping the Nazis. He helped recruit Muslims from Bosnia to the SS. Tens of thousands of Muslims served in the SS, against the call of local Muslim leaders not to collaborate with the Nazis. Some of these Muslim SS soldiers even fought against the Jews later on in 1948. However, the Mufti Amin al-Husseini was not alone in Nazi Germany. As you probably realized by now, The connection I'm talking about here goes further than one important Arab leader becoming pro-Nazi. There were other Arab leaders with him. One of them was Hassan Salameh. The name Hassan Salameh is known in Israel because his son, Ali Hassan Salameh Ymach Shmo, was one of the terrorists who were responsible for the murder of 11 Israeli athletes in the 1972 Munich Olympics. Anyway, Hassan Salameh was one of the commanders of the Arab revolt against the Jews and the British in the 1930s during the British Mandate. On his English page on Wikipedia, the writers forgot to mention that he and his gang murdered many Arabs in Palestine as well. I find it interesting that so very often when Palestinian leaders from the 1930s till today murder other Palestinians, it gets zero coverage. Anyway, Hassan Salameh underwent commando training in Nazi Germany and was part of Operation Atlas. Operation Atlas was carried out in 1944. 5 members of the SS, 3 Germans who grew up in Mandatory Palestine, and 2 Arabs, Hassan Salameh and Abdul Latif, parachuted between Jerusalem and Jericho in order to gather intelligence. There is a theory that they were planning to poison the water sources of Tel Aviv. As mentioned earlier, we know that the Mufti was discussing it with the Italians in 1936. But there is not enough evidence to support this theory. And all of the unit members, except Hassan Salameh, were caught by the British before they were able to carry out their plans. Hassan Salameh was later killed in the war of 1948. The Arab rival of the Mufti Amin Al-Hussein, a man called Fawzi El-Kawakji, also took refuge in Nazi Germany and contributed to the Nazi Arab propaganda machine. Both he and Hassan Salameh even married German women. Why marry a German girl? In 1947, Kawakji said, "The battle between the Arabs and the Jews is a total battle, and the only possibility is the annihilation of every Jew in Palestine and all Arab countries." Kawakji was one of the leaders of the Arab forces in the 1948 war. And as you can see from the quote above, he had rather radical views aligned with the Nazis' view of the Jews. After the war, he lived in Syria. So as I explained, the connection between the Arabs of Palestine and the Nazis started in the 1930s and continued to strengthen throughout the war years. This is a well-documented connection, and it's obvious that the issue that brought the two parties together was their hatred of the Jews. Did all Muslims follow the Mufti? Of course not. Some Muslims even risked their lives to save Jews, notably in Albania. But that doesn't change the overall picture. The rise of nationalism in Iraq, Egypt, Syria also has some connection to Nazi ideology. And this partly explains the anti-Semitism that exists in the Arab world. And just a quick note on the word anti-Semitism. To avoid any misunderstanding, I know the Arabs, like the Jews, are considered to be Semitic people, because both languages are Semitic. But that definition of Semitic doesn't apply when anti is added to the word. So when we say anti-Semitic, the meaning is anti-Jewish. And by the way, when Mein Kampf was first translated into Arabic in the 1930s by Fritz Grober, remember him, the Nazi diplomat in Iraq? He was the first to translate Mein Kampf to Arabic. He actually changed the word anti-Semitic to anti-Jewish in the Arabic version, to avoid any misunderstanding. Mein Kampf was published many times in Arabic and is one of the biggest bestsellers in Muslim world. And because I have a German wife, and because I'm a tour guide, I know how often Germans who travel to Muslim countries are told how great Hitler was. They hear it in other places as well, but they hear it a lot in Muslim countries. Muslim society is highly anti-Semitic, and the roots of it go back to the connection between Mufti Amin al-Husseini and Hitler. Usually, I don't give my sources because I talk about basic things that can easily be found on Google. Most of what I've said in this video is no different, but because this topic might be totally new to you, here are a few books recommendations. Some of the books can be read online. Mufti and the Fuehrer,
Rise and Fall of Hajj Amin al-Husseini, Nazi Palestine, The Plans for the Extermination of the Jews in Palestine, A Genealogy of Evil, Anti-Semitism from Nazism to Islamic Jihad. I will leave some links in the description. Please help me spread the word. I'm doing my very best. Now it is your turn. There is a share button below and you can post it on your social platform accounts. Like this video, subscribe and share it. I want to thank my supporters. You keep me going. Please share this video and see you next week. Yalla bye.